comes out higher, by the way. That's what I was gonna.
We're live. We're live.
Make sure everyone speaks loudly and clearly into the microphone.
They won't be, they're not up yet. The 16th. Got a birthday going on here.
Already did. We're live.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Tuesday, February the 9th, and the time is now 9:05. We do apologize for the delay. We had to clean up some technical difficulties this morning already. We do have a fairly short agenda today because we have a site visit that we'll be going to immediately after this to two training centers, one in Macon-Bibb County, and the second one will be in Houston County. At this time, I officially welcome you to the meeting and call this meeting to order. We'll begin with the approval of the minutes. The first item on the agenda is the minutes of the Committee of the Whole, January 26, 2021. Can I get a motion? Got a motion by Commissioner Wynn, second by Commissioner Wilder. Any discussion in that regard? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to new alcohol licenses. New alcohol licenses, we do have several of those on the agenda. I believe 5. The first one is a new alcohol beverage license for Discount Zone located at 2031 Sterling Drive, Macon, Georgia. Can I get a motion on that? Get a motion? I'll make a motion. Can I get a second? Got a second for, who was that? I'm sorry. Jones? I can't make a motion. We've already been through this. I can't vote unless there's a tie, but I certainly can make a motion. What's not true? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in, I'm sorry, let's in discussion on that matter. I'm sorry. Commissioner,
I'm assuming this passed all the tests that need to pass and sheriff's done their thing. Is this, well, do you know where this is on Sherling Drive? Discount Zone.
Yeah, this passed all the qualifications that we have
Okay.
On there. This is a beer and wine package to go. According to the documents I have, it complies with all the engineer's requirements and signed off by our engineer. as well as the sheriff on this. Owner's name is Macon Management Georgia LLC, and this is a proposed commercial, industrial, and institutional use. Any other questions in that regard?
Is it to the school, the King Elementary? Because I'm trying to.
I'm not sure how close it is,
There
but
it is.
it's no more than 300 feet from Macon-Bibb housing property is one of the qualifications, and it would not be able to serve alcohol if it was too close. I think it's 1,000 feet.
1,500, I think.
Well,
Okay.
Wes Attorney may be able to come up and answer those questions. I'm sorry.
For schools and housing authority property, the rule's 100 yards.
Okay.
I didn't hear that.
100 yards is the limit for schools and housing authority property. If it's closer than 100 yards, then it can't get a license.
That answer your question, Commissioner Lucas?
Mhm.
Thank you, Attorney McNeil. Any other questions in that regard? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Who's that? Nay on Lucas and nay on Pro Tem Clark. Okay,
We've got enough.
that motion carries. Nay too? Okay. But we'll call for a revote. All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Okay, opposed, nay? Okay, we'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Wynn, please. Commissioner Bronson?
Nay.
Commissioner Lucas?
No.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
No.
Mr. Wilder?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Watkins?
No.
That motion fails. Commissioner Wynn, you have a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. This has been approved, and so if we say nay, we really don't have a basis for denial, and we would lose if they were to pursue this to get it approved. Is that not correct?
That's your assessment, and we'll leave those up to the attorneys. Attorney McNeil?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to remind the commission of the procedural effect of this vote, by voting no here, that refers the matter up to the county attorney's office to notify them of a right for a hearing. I'm going to need some sort of basis that I can put in the letter. If you want to have some discussion on what I can put in the letter as a reason for denial, then I can tell them. Or if you're not comfortable with stating a basis, then maybe it would be better to table the matter and we can have them come in or ask questions for the owner or something like that.
Well, they've passed the test that we need, all the things that they have to pass. But I think the issue here is we've got so many places selling alcohol already. I think that's the statement that's trying to be made with that. But then, if we don't have a basis, probably can't do this. I mean, don't need to do this as a no.
Okay. Commissioner? Excuse me. We have Commissioner Wynn has the floor now. We'll move on to Commissioner
Yeah.
Lucas.
Yes, my reason for voting no is just that Shirley Drive is just crawling. We are overpopulated with alcohol on Shirley Drive, Gray Highway, Emory Highway, all over that area. And so mine was a statement of concern about, access. And I'm pleased that others share that, but I'd rather table it because all of the other requirements are met. But I'd rather table it just so we can take another look at it, and I'd like to see the location of it too. So it's just with additional questions. So would that motion be in order?
Commissioner Lucas, we've already voted on this. If you someone would like to make a motion for reconsideration,
Consider, yeah.
we can do that, and if it passes, we'll move to table it at that time.
Yes, I'd like to move to reconsider.
Okay. I take that as a motion to reconsider by Commissioner Lucas. Is there a second? Got a second by Minnie. Any discussion on that matter? Commissioner Howell.
I just pulled this up on the map. It's right across the street from, it looks like a church. Is it far enough away from it?
There's no distance rule for churches except for liquor stores. So if they're just doing beer and wine, which is my understanding, then there's no distance limitation from churches. Right, yeah, we can confirm.
That was my question I was gonna ask him.
Commissioner Bronson?
Now, it's same question I was gonna ask, sir, in regards to, I'm pulling the map as well, and it's right across the street from a church. I wanna know what was the regulation in regards to distance from a church as well.
And Commissioner Jones?
Finally, let me remind all my fellow commissioners that if it meets the requirements of the law, we don't have a legal basis to deny the license. So all you're doing is encouraging a lawsuit. So keep that in mind. Whether you drink or whether you don't drink, it's a legal entity, it's licensed legally, and it hadn't been a trouble spot to my knowledge. We have no basis to turn them down.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. We have a motion and second on the reconsideration. Commissioner Clark, you have a question?
Yeah, I just kind of following up with what Commissioner Howell and Commissioner Bronson said, and Commissioner Lucas on the distance guidelines. I pulled it up as well, and I can't tell if they're in 100 yards of I guess what's Jones Elementary by which way the crow flies, and that's my basis for my vote. I just would like to confirm that they're outside of the distance from the elementary school, like Commissioner Lucas said as well. So,
Commissioner Watkins?
I was just following up on that first page of paperwork. They didn't define themselves as what type of business they were. I know we got the new Vice Smart ordinance, but they didn't define themselves, which is not completing the paperwork. Small thing, but. And I guess also to that, was this going to be a place that was installing gas pumps? It didn't appear to from their license. That didn't appear to be the thing either. So just a couple to follow up on while we're tabling.
Commissioner Lucas, you have a follow-up before the vote?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, when people make comments about, as far as I know, there are no complaints. There are homes. If this is the location I'm thinking of, there's a neighborhood, a large neighborhood directly behind this particular location. There is a buffer, I believe, behind, but in many neighborhoods, and a number of them that I represent, there are alcohol outlets all around and inside of neighborhoods. So this is a concern that's been expressed to me over and over and over. And those churches, if there are churches there, I bet you they don't know or haven't felt like they were in a position to ask about these different things that are surrounding them. So my concern is just to get additional information, and it doesn't bother me at all if we've got to eventually do it. I want us to stop now and take a look at it, and then answer all of my questions so that I can answer the questions of the folks who live right behind and worship right across the street from it. Some might not have that problem in their area, but I have it in my district. So that's my reason for expressing that concern. And if we don't stop now and take a stand on some of these things, then we'll continue in the areas like my district, our district, to continue to get these. And they won't be in Ingleside or some places in North Macon, but they'll be on Sherling Drive and Emory Highway and Gray Highway near schools and churches. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. Commissioner Jones, you have a question?
Yes, so just a follow-up point to Commissioner Clark. So regarding distance, it's met the requirements per the Sheriff's Department. That's something they do during the normal process. So according to them, it meets the distance requirements.
Thank you. And I know, Commissioner Bronson, you got a question. All we're doing now is actually doing the reconsideration. Can we go ahead and do that? Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor for consideration. All those in favor of the motion to reconsider, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, that motion carries. We reconsider that. Now can I entertain a motion to table? Motion to table by Commissioner Lucas, a second by Commissioner Bronson. Any discussion on that motion to table? Okay, I'm sorry. No discussion necessary on that. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. One no, Commissioner Jones. And that item is tabled. We'll move on to the second one. I just want to go ahead and say this just for the record. For future, we send these out ahead of time with all the documents to there, and I know you've had an opportunity to review those. And I sent out at least 2 emails asking for any questions ahead of time. It will help address these issues ahead of time if we can get those questions so we can address all your needs and have everything ready for you when we got here if we don't anticipate your questions. So having said that, we'll move on to the second item B, which is a new alcohol license for Chevron Mart on 1106 Rocky Creek Road. I get a motion to approve. A motion by Commissioner Wynn. Do you have a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion on that matter? 1106 Rocky Creek Road. We only have 2 schools. It's Southfield is on Rocky Creek.
This is on Houston Avenue and the Rocky Creek.
Okay. And there's no school there.
There's Chevron from Southfield, going to the closest school. Should they?
Ms. Mayor and fellow commissioners, I'm going to be asking these questions routinely because I want folks to know what area is being impacted by it, and along with the moratorium that you have discussed and put in place, and other concerns that we've expressed over the last several years. That's why I'm asking these questions.
Yeah, certainly no problem in asking those questions. I believe they're reasonable questions. And I think we'll have those answers for you as long as we get that in a timely fashion. The other thing is that we're talking a little bit of policy here, so perhaps we need to look at doing some policy. If you've got some suggestions on the way to handle this better from a policy standpoint, instead of dealing with something that we already working on the current law to protect our own selves. But the Rocky Creek Road, did that answer your question about the school, the closest school there, Commissioner Lucas?
There is none,
Right.
real close.
That's correct. Okay. Got a motion and a second. We have a further question. Commissioner Watkins, you have a question?
Yeah, so, again, this is 1106, the Chevron right on the corner of Rocky Creek. It's registered as a gas station. It's a long-standing gas station. But just a side note, we got the ad hoc committee on co-am machines. This is at times the highest and always in the top 5 highest grossing areas as far, locations when it comes to these machines. Talking 6 figures, net in 6 figures a month. It's not the school, but it's proximity to that Coca-Cola plant where you have a lot of industry and a large number of apartment complexes that have a lot of low and mid-income elderly women or retirees on fixed incomes that patronize that store for the purpose of the co-am machines.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Commissioner Howard, you have a question?
No.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. It appears no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. It appears to be Commissioner Pro Tem Clark and Commissioner Watkins vote no. That motion carries. We'll move on to item C. New alcohol beverage license for Shell Food Mart on 6369 Thomason Road. I get a motion to approve. Got a motion by Commissioner Wilder, second by Commissioner Howell. Any questions in that regard on Thomason Road? No questions? This time I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Move on to item D, which is a new alcohol license for the Patella Distribution Company located at 4480 41 Circle, Suite B, Macon, Georgia 31206. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Wynn. Any question in regards to the item for the Patella Distribution Company? My understanding, this is just wholesale storage place for wine, and they actually distribute that to other locations. Have no question. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Will be sent to the consent agenda. Move on to the final item for alcohol license, which is E, new alcohol beverage license for the VMR Food Mart located at 6140 Thomaston Road, Macon, Georgia 31220. Can I get a motion to approve? Got a motion by Commissioner Wilder, second by Commissioner Howell. Questions in that regard? Commissioner Wayne, you have a question?
Not a question, but a comment again. We're approving 2 new alcohol licenses on Thomaston Road. I don't know how close they are to each other, haven't looked it up, but, you know, it gets into the question of, again, what we've been discussing this morning. It's just a comment to follow up on some other comments that we are getting so many of these new alcohol licenses. I just hate to see this, but because they passed the test, we're having to vote yes. But I sure wish there was something we could do about it.
I understand, and I hear the commissioner's voice this morning loud and clear. This is a policy decision, and that's what you do is policies. That's something you need to look at if you want to make any changes in the future. Right now, we're acting within the law that we have to deal with at the time these licenses were applied for. So I have a motion and a second. It doesn't appear we have. I'm sorry, Commissioner Watkins, you have a question?
And I keep hearing folks saying that we don't have the authority or the agency to make these decisions, but I just want to go on record as disagreeing with that. Our policy does give us a lot of power here. I mean, some of it requires paperwork and a little forethought, but if there is a community who has no interest, they feel as it does a neighborhood watch, a neighborhood association who's in the minimum vocal about not wanting something, and I think we've had widespread community outcry as to the density. That it not being in the interest or the desires of the community. There's language, and I can email what I think is already enough within our code to say no if we want to say no. Like, we got to stand on it, and it might call, this is America, if someone disagrees with it, they might try to sue us or use the process, which the actual process is internalized. They can appeal to us and turn, because we have a process for if we say no. So anyway, but I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Watkins. We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries. We sent the consent agenda. We'll move on to, I'm sorry. Sure, Commissioner Jones, I'm sorry.
Just add to the discussion, Commissioner Watkins. If we don't like the policy, then we need to change the law. We don't have the right to pick winners and losers and say, you don't have a right to have a license, but you do. You know, then we get into monarchy. This is America. So I ask you to consider that.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. One final comment, Commissioner Brunson.
You get it.
Okay, we move on to item E. This is a resolution appointing Lisa Watson to serve on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Board, sponsored by myself and Commissioner Lane Lucas. Commissioner Lucas, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner Lucas. We have a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. This time, Commissioner Lucas, would you like to speak on that?
Yes, sir. Reverend Lisa Watson has not been a member of the commission. However, she is the program director for the Evangelical Ministers Alliance, and they are an organization that for over 20 years, they have sponsored many of the activities of the King Commission, and we have endorsed those activities. She has attended meetings of the commission and hasn't even been a member, and she is an advocate for South Macon and all of the positive activities that go on out there. So I'd like to highly recommend Pastor Lisa Watson to serve on the King Board.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. And Commissioner Lucas, since you asked me last time to make sure we have at the main meetings, if you'll ask for Reverend Watson to be here, we'll recognize her at that time so people can see her, and we'll have that on a separate agenda by itself. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion in regards to this appointment? Hearing no discussions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. We'll move on to item B, which is a resolution submitting Dr. Teresa Robinson, Milton Appling, and Bill Tiff as a slate of nominees to succeed Chantel King-Whitby on the Macon-Bibb County Hospital Authority Board. That motion is sponsored by myself. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Wynn. Any discussion in that regard?
Teresa Robinson's not a doctor, is she? Or is that another Teresa Robinson?
There's a Dr. Teresa Robinson, and she's
There
the one
is?
listed on this.
Oh, okay, it's not the one we know.
It's not the one, George Powell, that we all know of, no ma'am. We
I'm
have,
wondering when she did that. Yeah.
we have a motion and a second, no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That's one no from Commissioner Lucas, thank you. We'll move on to item C. It's a resolution submitting David Danzy, Andy Galloway, and Ellis Evans as a slate of nominees to succeed David Danzy on the Macon-Bibb County Hospital Authority Board, sponsored by myself. Can I get a second? A second by Commissioner Wynn. Any discussion in that regards? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, no. That motion carries, will be sent to consent agenda. We'll move on to section 4, which is Black History Month. This will be a resolution to recognize the month of February 2021 as Black History Month, sponsored by Commissioner Elaine Lucas. Commissioner Lucas, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, sir, I so move.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lucas. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Bronson. Any comments in that regard? Commissioner Lucas?
Yes, sir. You're anticipating that I'm reading my mind. That's dangerous.
Scary.
Yeah. At the next meeting, when this resolution is read, I would like to invite, with your permission, different organizations that are involved with the promotion of Black history in Macon and Bibb County, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am, that would be
To
fine.
receive it.
Make sure that we know the approximate amount of people so we can make sure the social
Okay.
distance and do the protocols, but that's certainly reasonable.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second, no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously, be sent to the consent agenda. Move on for items for financial considerations. The first item A is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for the 2021 LMIG grant in the amount of $1,928,431.65. This authorizes acceptance of funds, appropriating funds for the required local match, plus additional funds of $826,821 to be paid from 2018 SPOS revenue. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion in this regards? I haven't seen no questions, heard no questions. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously, be sent to the consent agenda. Move on to item B, which is a resolution to approve the 29th amendment to the 2018 SPOS project timeline and budget as presented by the SPOS project manager. That motion is sponsored by myself. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Wynn. Any discussion in regards to that timeline change? No discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Item C is an ordinance to authorize the appropriation of up to $5,656,359 from the 2018 SPOS proceeds, Walker Road landfill, closure line item for the payment of costs related to the closure of the landfill. That item is sponsored by myself. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. Any question in this regards? No questions? Commissioner Watkins, I was waiting for you.
At minimum, can we get an explanation or a picture of what we plan on doing with $5.5 million?
If Dr. Moffitt could give you some update on that.
Good morning, Commissioners. No picture at this time. If you recall, you hired Hostetler to put the plan together. Since we knew we were not going to build a transfer station or acquire that land, all this is doing is putting that into the one line item for closure.
Say it one more time.
You recall there are 3 line items in the SPOS for the closures: closure, purchase of land, and construction of a transfer station. Okay. Since we're not constructing a transfer station or buying land, we're just moving that into one line item.
I thought we were building multiple transfer stations.
Well, and that'll come out of the closure. The convenience centers,
Right.
This will put everything in that line item as we present you with the plan on moving forward. If you recall, that is part of the plan to do at least 4 to 5 convenience centers in the community and the comprehensive closure plan.
Maybe I can answer that question for you, Mr. Watkins, before you ask the next one. All this is just freeing up the money in case we need to use it. Everything will be brought back before the commission before we spend any money. But this is going to be used to purchase a huge transfer station or to buy land, and since we're no longer doing that, we're basically going to reallocate those funds for the general use of closing the landfill, which could and will include the 5 convenience centers that we spoke about earlier.
Just out of curiosity, why not keep the closure of the landfill as Project A and the creation of convenience centers as Project B? Why the need to merge them?
Well, I mean, when you look at the language says purchase of land for a transfer station and construction of a transfer station. So we just thought it'd be more convenient, just put it in one line item so we knew how we were doing it.
All right, and just remind me, so we're moving, and I guess we just did it in the timeline change. We moved several years forward, or this 5.5 was all in 2021?
We're moving it forward. It was originally set for 2022 and 2023, I believe.
Correct.
We're moving that up to this timeline because we're going ahead and starting the closure process.
So with the old rules of timeline, was if we move money back forward, we needed to have something to offset that, to keep everything balanced.
Well, this is,
Mr. Murphy, will you come forward, please, sir?
oh, I didn't even see you here.
Good morning. We are not moving any money forward. There was money in 2021 for $2.8 million for purchase and $2.8 million for transfer. The intent to roll everything into this closure line item is that we have not identified exactly what those costs are going to be.
Let me pull it up at this point. Because I thought, so we're taking both line items, I just need to look at it at this point. We're taking both and all three and moving them into one.
We're taking the $2.8 million in purchase in 2021 and the $2.77 million in transfer in 2021, moving it to the closure line item in 2021. There is no moving of money forward or backwards. It's just reallocating that money to the closure. We don't have an absolute cost for any of these projects, and it's easier to put it all in one line item so that we can address all the needs at one time.
Okay, so we're gonna close, and that's fine. But there's right now, so the old plan was not to close it until 2022, and now we're gonna start closure in 2021.
Technically, yes, according to the timeline, but remember the plan was
I thought the timeline was the plan.
It was, but I'm just
sorry.
saying, but when we talk about the timeline, when we were, it included the transfer station.
Right, because we were gonna build the transfer station first, so we would have some place to put the trash while we had the whole thing closed.
Correct.
So now, what are we planning on doing now?
We're planning on A, building convenience centers, B, putting out the RFP to close the landfill, but before we do that, we gotta get the landfill in a condition to do the construction. So that is what we're working on now. And remember, you approved that last week in the 3 tasks for Hofstadter.
Fair enough. So of the 5.5 that we have access to now, how much of that is for convenience centers and how much of that is for the landfill?
I can only give you rough estimates now as we, one, identify sites. We anticipate, I believe, about $125,000
125 to 150,000 per site.
per site.
So how much are we anticipating for landfill closure? How much are we anticipating to be able to complete?
Again, rough estimate numbers, Mr. Hofstadter said that can be anywhere from 9 to 14 million in numbers that have been thrown out there.
So of the 5.5 that we're allocating for the year 2021, our goals are to build transfer stations first,
Correct.
and that's roughly 125 a pop. Times five.
Correct.
And we anticipate having that project completed when?
One, we gotta identify the sites first, so probably within 6 months to a year.
And in tandem with that, we'll be doing what at the landfill?
Remember, we have to get the landfill in condition for closure, so we have to go in and change the slopes from 2 to 1 to 3 to 1. So we have to move some trash for that, and we have to put out the RFP for the closure. And and that could take anywhere from 6 months to 8 months.
And this is written down, Hofstadter already written down this plan, and we got it.
He's writing it now, because some of that involves me with EPD also, and getting their approvals and everything, so we're constructing that plan now.
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Commissioner Lucas, you have a follow-up question?
Mr. Murphy, this was the first time I've seen him in a while. I wondered if he could kind of tell us the kinds of things that, who he is. I don't know whether everybody knows who he is and what his work has been. Many of us do, but some might not. And then your involvement with projects going forward, as far as SPLOST.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. I appreciate you trying to bring the new commissioners up to speed and educate them. They have had training on this privately before coming on, so they do know who Mr. Murphy is and what he does. But any updates and the rest of the questions you can answer for Commissioner Lucas would be appreciated, Mr. Murphy.
Commissioners, it's nice to see you. My name is Clay Murphy, and I've been the SPLOST coordinator for the past almost 8 years. I manage the projects for the county that involve SPLOST dollars, some black dollars, and other projects as determined by the commissioners and the administration. Currently, I mean, we have ongoing projects all over the county. North Macon Park is getting ready to, bids should be in next week. We have just completed new lighting at Bloomfield Recreation Center over there for the sports lighting. We are under construction for the new softball fields at Central City Park. Mattie Hubbard Jones Park in Pleasant Hill has been awarded. Jeffersonville Road construction is complete. Landfill, sheriff, work with the sheriff and the fire department on purchase of equipment that they need that's run through SPLOST, whether it's vehicles or safety equipment. So it's kind of a big, large gamut of items, and I'll be happy to discuss any and all of it with you if you're interested. I just don't know if this is the right forum to do that. But I am involved daily with SPLOST projects.
Commissioner Lucas, that answer your question?
Thank you.
Commissioner Watkins, you had a follow-up?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
So, Clay, can you explain a little bit like the convenience centers? Like y'all mentioned that it's gonna cost $125,000 to build each of them. What is it again? That come out about
These
$750.
convenience centers are a place, my understanding is these are a place where people can go to take trash other than household waste that will then be moved to and taken from that center to a landfill, whether it's C&D or yard waste. But the cost for about $125,000 may not include the purchase of the land, if I'm correct. It may or may not. I mean, it kind of depends. But we've got to get. You got to do this before you can do that. We've got work to do in the landfill, preparing to close. In the meantime, we've got to stop taking materials to the existing landfill. So we've got to have these transfer stations. Mm-hmm. So they have to happen. The plan for the closure and the opening of transfer stations needs to happen simultaneously.
So I've seen you in a lot of government work over the years. Convince me just and help me that 125, 750,000 for this whole project is a good number. We're just clearing at this point. We're just clearing land. It's just leveling land.
Well, and your question is very valid. In one,
I've seen paving. Like I imagine, like a half mile worth of paving would be more than that.
Well, your question is the analogy we use: are we going to build a Cadillac, or are we going to build a U-boat? And depends on how nice you can make it, depending on where they're located. Because you can do landscaping where you won't even see it from the main road. People have suggested we put these in certain neighborhoods. In order to do that, we know it has to have a certain look. So the landscaping and that construction will add into what the estimated price is. And right now we're looking at land that we currently own, that we can deem surplus, to try to locate these. So I've sent a list of surplus to the commissioners on last week, so you could see if you knew something in your area that looked that neighbors would be okay with having a convenience center in that area. But for the most part, the $125,000 would be on the design the architectural work, getting the cans in there. And again, 'cause you need about 5 acres with a buffer is what we're anticipating.
At each center?
But possibly, that's what we anticipate. Because again, you think about it. What do you want to
I mean, I don't disagree, but
Yeah.
that's not $125,000.
Well,
And I guess my concern is moving the money out of the allocated spot for transfer station to moving to the very expensive closure line
well,
really locks us into
and again, I use the
the,
word,
what do you call it, the Yugo?
you go. And again, I use the word estimate because it comes in much less than that. That is great. But again, giving us the making sure sticker shock, that's what we've been told that it could cost up to that much, depending on what we build. Because some you may have to, if we want to build something very elaborate, it can have some ramps that could go up to where people could push it off into the thing. Because normally they have a can maybe 3 to 4 feet where you could easily take it and throw it over. But if we do larger cans, you have to have some type of ramp to get up there. So again, we have to look at all that in architecture and design and construction.
Yeah,
And I don't want to confuse it by getting the devil's in the details, but right now we're going through the concept area.
yeah, and I guess just the paving work on what you mentioned alone seems like it could be, and am I,
If you pay it, some you don't have to pay.
okay. So again, that's more Yugo.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, now let me clear a couple of things. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. First of all, we're assuming that we're going to use land that we surplus that we already own, so that's not going to be a cost. It could be that we purchase land that's more convenient in a district that we have to purchase. That's one consideration. What we envision, and we'll be happy to do a site visit with the commission to a couple that we looked at ourselves to give you an idea of what they look like. You enter into a 4 to 5 acre tract that has a fence, security fence around there. It has security cameras. It has what, for lack of a better term, is called a guard shack, where the person that's going to actually be maintaining the open enclosure of that convenience center will have heating and air and a restroom there that they'll work out of. There's generally a small paved area entering there, but then you get into a crush and run type circular so you can get back out. So the trucks that come in won't mess up the concrete to pick up these items. You'll have a tire cage and some maybe glass, other recyclable area, and then you'll have 4 or 5 roll-off containers there that are about 4 feet high that one person could do by themselves, but certainly the help of the person there that's running the place could be. We anticipate the cost to be around $125,000 to $150,000. $24,000 of that, you remember, were approved by this commission last week, where Hostetler's design process. We certainly hope to come under budget, but the last thing we want to do is tell you one figure and go above that. This project has nothing to do with taking any money away from the landfill, because we'll complete this before we ever start the large majority of closing the landfill. One of the things that we keep talking about, the closure of the landfill is going to happen starting now. The other thing is to close the landfill to the public. We can't close the landfill to the general public until we have an option for them to put trash at. And the first option is going to be the location we've chosen already downtown. We did the test on the building. We're going to remove that structure, the old animal shelter. That's going to be the first pilot project, so you'll have a chance to look at that. But we want to do that in 90 days. And we want to select all the other properties that we're going to have the other 4 at, so they can start to design that process. And that each one is going to take about 60 to 90 days once we get the concept, and plus leveling it out. We don't know what kind of site work we're going to do. And it could change based on the properties that you commissioners agree, because it may require some dirt to be brought in or some grading to be done for the project. So those are just mere estimations. We talked to other counties that had theirs, and they told us about how much that they spent on the ones they did, so we've got a pretty good estimate on what it costs to build these. But once again, it's just an estimate. Commissioner Howell, you have a question?
Just to add to what you were saying, and to ease Commissioner Watkins' concern, paving is an expensive part of this, but due to state and federal regulations now about stormwater and runoff, we can't pave this because you have to have enough impervious surface for draining. That way you don't have to have retention pond and all. So actually, due to that, we're not going to pave it anyway.
No. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. If no further discussions, I'm sorry, Commissioner Watkins, you have a question?
So, again, the current line items were, there was a line item for closure, there's a line item for purchasing, and there's a line item for transfer. And we're combining or we are doing away with the allocations for purchasing and the construction of a transfer station and putting it into a line item that is earmarked for Walker Road, 2021 Walker Road landfill closure line item for the payment of professional services and construction costs relating to the closure of Walker Road. It just seems like that locks us into not being able to spend these dollars on the transfer station items. So just help me out with that. I'm sure I'm wrong, but that's just what it reads like when I read this item that we're voting on.
I think it's just an accounting mechanism. You're not locking yourself into anything. The commission can come back next week and change it. This just gives us the flexibility to do the projects that we see that need to be completed within a reasonable certain time. So we're not locking ourselves into anything. We can always come back if we need to adjust it, but it allows for the flexibility to put everything in one line item so we can go ahead and start doing what we need to do in order so we don't keep kicking the can down the road like it's been done so long on the closure. So this gives us the flexibility to do that.
It gives us full flexibility to work on the closure, but it seems like it would require something else to be able to do something it would require another amendment to be able to do something with transfer station. Am I wrong on that, dude?
No, I don't think, I think that, well, we call these convenience centers, they are mini transfer stations, but my understanding, and I know certainly my position, is we're not doing a large transfer station any longer.
A mini transfer station, I accept that.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
But now we're defunding the transfer station line item in order to spend more money on Walker Road landfill closure.
Well, we're freeing up the money from the 5.7 that y'all initially had planned on to save about $4 million on these mini transfer stations, and we're able to use that money if necessary for the closure of the landfill because it may not have been budgeted enough. And if not, it will go back into the other SPOS projects. And we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know how much it's going to cost to close it. We're using projections here. This gives us the flexibility to meet the needs of our citizens by doing these mini transfer stations out of the existing money y'all approved, and we're saving $4 million.
Okay, I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Watts. All right, we got a motion and a second. No further discussion. This for Commissioner Watkins is looking at me funny. I'm sorry, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioner Lucas.
So once if this is approved, then when would we get an update as to, would that be as you make adjustments to it? My big fear is when you approve large amounts like this, you never hear from it again. And I don't want that to happen with almost $6 million. So what's the...
We can have it updated as much or as often as commission wants. The first step is to get these convenience centers done. You've already approved last week $16,000 per month going for the changing the slopes and getting into a pre-closure status. That along with this is going to be around $2 million on its own. If we run into any other issues, we can do that. We can do an update. I would suspect that after we get information from the commissioners that we sent you on the surplus property to have a better understanding of what we're going to spend and a timeline for you, certainly after we do the first convenience center, I think we'll know what that costs and can give you a better estimate on what we're looking at. And then after Hostel comes back with an update and report in probably about 90 days to let us know about his conversations with the EBD and let us know where we're at on the closure landfill, we can probably have a better estimate for you. But we have to start somewhere, and this is the process of doing that, and this money allows us the flexibility to do that.
Okay, and the final thing is on these convenience centers, seems like I heard someone say that some will look like one thing and some may look a little different. I hope that that's just...
It's just because of the lay of the land.
The land,
yes.
yeah, that all of them are gonna be, fairly consistent. And because they are a place to put trash, but you want to ensure that the neighborhood, if it's near where people live, that we don't build in some concerns for them.
No, we want it to be very, pleasing to the eye, and I think we want to be as consistent as possible across the district to maintain equity and balance. And at the same time, we're limited to some certain properties that you may choose that may alter. For example, we have one that we're looking at now That's 3.9 acres. It may be a great location for it, a little bit smaller than the 5 acres we're calling for, but it may be the best purpose for that in a certain area. So yeah, I think they're gonna look pretty consistent. They're all gonna look really good. We want to encourage people to use them, so they have to look pleasing. So, but we certainly try to, they won't all be cookie cutters because we don't have the same flat piece of land everywhere.
Okay.
I understand your question. Thank you very much. All right. I see no other green lights on except mine. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries with one exception, Commissioner Watkins. Okay, we move on to item D, an ordinance to supplemental budget appropriations from fund balance to coroner's office budget. Contracted services line item in the amount of $100,000 to provide funding for expenses related to the pickup storage of human remains. That is a supplemental sponsored by myself. That's a motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. Discussion. Having no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously to be sent to the consent agenda. Move on to item E, which is a resolution of the acceptance of a grant from the Office of Justice Programs, the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program, commonly known as the School Partnership Grant for the DA's office. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Lucas. Any discussion, any questions on that matter? Mr. Jones?
On D, would you go back to that a minute? And I don't know if everybody knows the background. I know you explained something to me about why that was funded and how important that was and how it would save us a lot of money.
Sure, I'll backtrack that. Just one brief second. I don't want to get back into a full discussion, but on item D, we paid this is a supplemental for bodies that are collected and stored and transported for a period of time. Bibb County is tasked with, specifically Leon Jones, to house those until we can determine who is the next of kin. And we set a budget on there, and for the last 3 years, I think the county has exceeded that budget, so you must come back before to do an amendment to fund that. I have asked our attorneys and met with them, as well as the courts, as well as our coroner, to come up with a smoother, more efficient process, which I believe is going to save us about $200,000. That process is a timeline, whereas we get notified early from the coroner Leon Jones to our attorneys, and we'll be filing a motion with the court and asking them to actually approve that order for cremation and pay for that cremation, which probably would save us somewhere of $5,000 to $6,000 per body. So thank you for that. We'll move on. We got a motion and a second on the item E. Any discussion on that matter? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. Move on to item F. Item F is the ordinance of Macon-Bibb County Commission, Article 5, Chapter 6 of the Code of Macon-Bibb County relating to the Blight Elimination Revolving Fund to appropriate money received from the subsequent tax program to the fund. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Bronson. Any discussion in that regard? As you recall, we had a meeting here, a press conference the other day, and the purpose of that is to start eliminating blight with the residential fire structures. Our intent is to make sure that all the blight bond money that goes to the subsequent tax sales, the code enforcement, and other blight bonds that we have go into one fund so we can start to begin this process of eliminating the blight and have a common source of funds to go through. Commissioner Lucas, did you have a question?
Yeah, this is a revolving loan fund. Is that the other part of your plan to allow for people to build on these?
That is another
That's
part.
clear.
That is not what this is. I have Attorney McNeil.
Oh, okay.
So when, this is a fund that was originally set up about a year ago under Mayor Rickert, and when he set it up, it was originally structured where the money from the subsequent tax sales and the blight tax increment would go into a fund that would be used to acquire property, remediate the property, and then resell the property. And so it's not a loan fund in the sense of loaning money to members of the community, but a loan fund in the sense of we're buying property, and so we're trading the money for land, and then we're trading the land back for money. And the change that's in this provision now takes away or supplements that by saying the money doesn't have to be spent on buying property, it can just also be used on remediating property that we're not purchasing. And so that's the main difference here, but the name was set up as revolving loan fund, so I just didn't change the name.
Don't you think you need to change it though?
We can.
Because revolving loan fund says something to me. It says that you have a fund there and that it's for the use, it's for people to borrow from. And I was assuming, since the mayor mentioned the whole idea added to your plan would be to empower maybe small businesses to come in and maybe put homes on those properties that have been remediated.
That's part two. I think what she's asking, could she do a friendly amendment just to remove the word loan and let's just have the elimination of revolving fund?
I would think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That amended motion, you get a second on that? Okay. That's an amended motion offered by Commissioner Lucas. We get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Bronson. Any further discussion on that item? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and be sent to consent agenda. Thank you, Commissioner Lucas, for that change. We'll move on to item 6, and we have some guests here today that's going to present on this. I want to go ahead and read that, ask for a motion second, and we'll let them do a presentation, and if you can hold your questions until after the presentation. We have an ordinance to amend Chapter 28 of the Code to establish an automated traffic enforced safety device program, Macon-Bibb County school zones, to provide the enforcement of such a program. That is sponsored by myself and Commissioner Bronson. Commissioner Bronson, would you like to make a motion? Got a motion by Commissioner Bronson. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Wilder. We have a motion and a second, and now we'll have a presentation. Mr. Bennett, will you come forward, please?
Thank you, Commissioners, for your time. Good morning. My name is Philip Bennett. I work for Opto Traffic. We provide photo speed enforcement in school zones. My title is a commercial development representative for the state of Georgia. We'll go through this PowerPoint presentation that I've provided for you. Can we go to the second slide, please? So,
I think, where's Chris Fuller at?
I'm running the PowerPoint.
Okay, well, we're not able to see it.
Are y'all's monitors on?
Yeah.
Let me come up there.
If they're on now.
We turned them on twice this morning and had some tech issues. Can everyone see it now? Excellent. Let's see it. Yeah. All right, thank you. Sorry about that.
We're good now. Go ahead, continue your presentation. We have a PowerPoint for Opto Traffic, and Mr. Michael Bennett is presenting. May
Yes.
proceed, sir.
yes. So our company, a little bit of history on our company, we were founded in 2005 from an aerospace company that worked with NASA to help shoot rockets up in space and then map the topography and then also weather patterns using LiDAR technology. So we took that technology with a law that was passed in Maryland, very similar to the one that was passed in 2018 in Georgia under House Bill 978. This allows for photo speed enforcement to take place specifically in school zones. The idea is to reduce the number of speeders in each school zone that that has issues. And what better way of doing that and not having to put law enforcement in that scenario? We're able to put technology in there instead of that. And those law enforcement personnel can respond to calls for service as in reference to that. The way the program works is it's 100% violator funded, so it doesn't cost the county and or city any money. We take the responsibility on. It's a very turnkey program where we handle all the back office, all of the hardware, all of the software that incorporates a program like this, and we take that on for the county to provide that service. The only way that we make money is once the violations are issued, there is a $25 processing fee on top of the $75. So you're looking at a $100 citation for speeding in the school zone. These are civil penalties. If we could go to the next slide. These are also, this gives you an idea of what our systems actually look like. As you can see, the top one is our Silverhawk system, and it has the Maryland state flag. That's right in College Park, Maryland. So they were very, feeling very, they just like the way it looks. And so it helps add to the aesthetics of the downtown area as well. But that's our Silverhawk system. That's our above-the-road LiDAR system. I will also note all of the stuff that we make, all of our systems that we make, it is all made here in the United States. We're 100% owned and operate in the United States. We also have a base of operations in Doraville, which I work out of, and my colleague as well, Mr. David Green. If we can go to the next slide. If you look at the bottom one, that is our Skyhawk. That is a generator-run system. It's a little bit more mobile. Of course, when we do the permitting process, we would not essentially move that. We would take the wheels off the hitch so nobody can run off with it. It's also designed in a way that it can't be vandalized easily. We can go to the next slide. This is what the violation process looks like. First, we capture the violation. We process it. We send it to our processors. They look and make sure that the registration and the car match. And so our processors go through that. Then we send it for final review by the law enforcement, which in your case it would be the sheriff's office. They would have the final approval. They would also have an electronic signature that would go along with it. They are the ones that say yay or nay on whether this citation gets issued. We don't, as a company, we don't have that. The only reason we would discard a violation is if the image is not clear, there's something in the way, all of that stuff. That would even make it to the police officers or sheriff's office to review. So we try to eliminate that as much as possible, and then also the law enforcement agency has the approval to either the final say yes or no in that process. Once that is done, we mail out the citations. This is all done on our side of it. The only interaction that the county was having is on the law enforcement side. They are going to say yes or no, and that process typically takes 5 to 10 seconds per citation. So it's not a very time-consuming endeavor for the law enforcement, so that they can get back to patrolling and doing what they need to do to help the community stay safe. We also have a financial tracking system as well that we'll work with the county on and make sure all of that information is lined out and presented in a fashion where you guys know what's going on with the money, where it's going, how many violators are coming through, and that can be presented in a monthly manner as well. We also have a court module system. We typically do 1 day a month for working with the either municipal or county courts for any kind of grievances that they might have. Usually, as a company, we've issued over 5 million citations as a whole that have been related to speed. We've been in the game, like earlier, since 2005, so we have lots of experience, and we've operated in over 5 different states as well that allow for this to take place. In those 5 million citations, around 1% go to court. Typically, it is either due to a hardship or I wasn't driving the vehicle. And then it's on them to shift the liability to improve the difference in liability, so they do that. We can go to the next slide. And this is just more of our back office services that we provide. We do all of this, like I said, it's very turnkey. We try to take the pressure off the county itself because we know that you guys are busy. We carry that load for you guys. This is just some things to consider that when House Bill 978 was passed in 2018. You can also see the Georgia Code section that it falls under. All of these citations that are issued, they are all civil penalties. So it does not affect anyone's insurance status, driver record, anything like that. So it issues, the citation goes to the registered owner of the vehicle. It's very similar to getting a parking ticket downtown. It won't, like I said, it won't affect their insurance, it won't affect their driver's license, anything like that. It just is simply written to that vehicle and to that registered owner of that vehicle. And that's where you kind of come back to the court thing. It's like, well, I wasn't driving it, my brother was driving it, and they have to prove on that side. Let's go to the next one. And this kind of just gives you a brief outlook on what it would look like as we start deploying these systems. The first thing that is involved is the permitting process through the Georgia Department of Transportation. During that process, we put together a comprehensive packet for each school zone individually. Making sure that it has a need for it, the number of speeds, fatalities, crashes in that area. We provide that to the Georgia Department of Transportation. We do that on behalf of the county. We provide that information to them, to the Department of Transportation, and it is sent to their traffic management center in downtown Atlanta to approve the permit. Once that permit is approved, then we start deploying the systems. We use local contractors to help us with putting concrete poles in the ground, all of this stuff, and then we come out and then we mount our systems on those poles that we use. After the installation takes place, there is a 30-day warning period. During this 30-day warning period, it enables people to be mailed a warning ticket. It has no fine amount attached to it, so that way they're well aware of, oh, there's a speeding camera in this school zone. I better be aware of this. It gives them plenty of time to alter that behavior and start reducing their speed, especially if they go through it on a consistent basis. If that's their way to work, to and from work, they could go through it multiple times. And so they have plenty of time to kind of be aware of that, especially during school hours, because that is the only time that these cameras operate is during the school day. It doesn't operate on the weekend. It only operates Monday through Friday during the school hours. Once that 30-day period starts taking place and we start getting violations into our VioView software, which is our processing software that the law enforcement personnel will be interacting with, we do training on that. And so I'll come down, I'll work with the law enforcement personnel that are being designated to oversee this program and train them on how to approve and not approve of certain violations. So that is also a service that we provide and make sure that everything is done correctly in an appropriate manner as well on it. Once that is done, we also establish a violation payment process that can either be done through a lockbox and also our online portal where people can pay online. We can also establish a walk-in center where personnel can have access to that portal and say this violation was paid and put it into the system online. So that way, for people that are don't have a computer in their household, or if they just don't like using computers that much, they can walk in and do it the old-fashioned way and talking to people and doing that way. So we offer that as well, and we'll provide that terminal for the county. And then we also have a lot of court hearing support. Like I alluded to earlier, is we work with the judges the prosecutors on that side to help educate everybody. We also bring our chief technology officer down to help with a judicial notice, very similar to what is done with a handheld LiDAR system with most officers. It is a judicial notice that continuously is used to, express how accurate the technology is. But it would typically take about 3 visits from our engineers to come down and explain that technology in the court setting, but we provide that as well. And as well, we have, for the officers, we provide a tablet to where they can look at all of the violations as they're going through the process and address any concerns on that. Go to the next slide. This is just a very preliminary study on how much traffic goes through some particular schools that we did in the free speed study. It was the no obligation free speed study that we did, just to kind of assess which schools might potentially have a speeding problem, which ones might not. And there were a couple. We did approximately 17 speed studies for the county. And
Interrupt you just for a second so we can say the question.
Mhm.
We talked earlier about Appling Middle School is being moved to a new location, so we'll ignore that because the school is no longer there right now.
Okay.
But I know you did numerous, and you're just focused on a couple right now, just for example purposes.
Correct, yes. And so this kind of gives you an idea of how many actual cars just go past. There, as you can see, there's a decent amount of cars that you probably might not think that go through that intersection, and how many violations occur from that. And this is information that we also have to provide to the Department of Transportation as well. But that just kind of gives you a little bit idea. And then the speed in that school zone, it's typically, in most of the school zones, it's 45 miles an hour during the non-flashing signs and 25 during the flashing signs. Also, our technology, the way it works as far as altering our speeds, is it does it automatically. We have a threshold from this time to this time. The threshold is 11 miles an hour over, which it would be, during the flashing yellows, would be 36 miles an hour. So that would be the enforcement threshold. And then it would stop and it would revert back to 45. Then the enforcement threshold would be 56 miles an hour. And then once the yellow goes back again, as class dismisses at the end of the day, it would drop back down to 36. But that just kind of gives you a little brief overview of what kind of traffic you're looking at in each particular school zone. It's a decent amount for each of the school zones. There's only, I think, Lane McKibben, we didn't have any violations, so that would be a school that we wouldn't really focus on too much because there's not that much of an issue. And that's the end of my presentation. If y'all have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay, Phil. I want to make a few comments first, and then we'll
Yes.
have a question just to kind of give the commission a general understanding of what we've been doing so far. First of all, we met as a group, and it requires the superintendent of Bibb County Schools to sign off on each and every one of these permits, assuming it's a Bibb County public school.
Correct.
Or the headmaster or principal of another school. For example, if you had Central Fellowship, which I can imagine with that school zone being on 247 would be an area that people drive faster than they're supposed to all the time. So we met with Dr. Jones and his staff because he's going to have to sign off on each one of those. The DOT has to sign off on each one of these. We met with the sheriff and the courts. We even met with the solicitor, although we don't plan on using the solicitor to prosecute these civil actions. We're doing this in-house in municipal court through our own county attorney's office, since we have such a small amount. So we already have everyone on board of that. One thing key to this particular system is 100% of the funds must be designated for public safety. I think that's a very important point. Although we're providing some safety, particularly around our young students and our schools, Dr. Jones wanted this to be equitable across the district, and one requirement that he had was to make sure that we do not just do this in one part of the town. He wanted this throughout the town. So if you look at the contract that we'll get to later on, the first phase of this would be all your middle and high schools. A lot of them on the same campuses, so it's easy to put up signage and do everything there. So we're starting out with about 8 to 10 of these during the first phase, so we can get our feet wet, so we can go through the process. We can determine the best time, place, and manner to handle these things. So we've done that in full agreement with everybody involved. We're going to start on the pilot project, part of that. There will be a 30-day moratorium, like you said, because if you don't know it's there, you may actually violate it 8 or 9 times before you get your ticket, and that can cause some problems, and it has. So this allows them to get a warning during that period of time and a pass, and then the next one after that time is up, they'll be put on notice. We receive $75, which is the full 100%. They make their money off the fee that's attached to that $25, which is administration fee. And after we start getting our first check, we'll receive a check once a month with a detailed list about how the citations went. If you do have a second offense, it does go up to $125 as well for someone who gets a second offense. Hopefully they've learned a lesson by now and we're safer, but this is another revenue stream to help fund our public safety and meet the needs of our community. So I want to let you know that that's who we talk to. We recommend this company here after looking through all that because the fact it's 100% USA, because they've got an office fairly local here, they don't subcontract any of these equipment out. This is the equipment they own. It's quite likely that they move an office here in Macon-Bibb County to store some of this and their equipment. So this is why we're bringing recommendations. So this time I know I've got a few questions. I'll go ahead and open it up to Commissioner Lucas.
Thank you. I see there's a lot of discussion that's going on, and I had written down a number of questions, and you've answered a number of them. You're saying that the fees, well, let me ask you this first. The concrete poles that would have to be placed,
Yes,
whose responsibility would that be?
it all falls under us. We take on that responsibility. We subcontract the erection of the poles, mainly because there's typically a decent amount that will go up. And so we have field technicians in place already, but their main focus is going to be putting up the system because it's a little bit more sensitive to kind of deal with that, and they're very familiar with that.
Okay, so the concrete poles would be your expense?
Correct.
And then the actual cameras or equipment themselves on the poles, that's your expense?
Correct.
As well?
Yeah,
How much do those cost?
Per pole, as a full setup, it's usually maybe around $10,000 per system that puts up, but that's including the actual system and the components that make up that system and the contract work that's done. But it varies.
How often do you test it to make sure that it's accurate?
Every morning. So, and then there's also a third party that comes in that is also required by the state of Georgia that makes sure every year, annually, that the systems are within compliance and it meets the correct amount of calibrations. It calibrates 3 times each morning before the system goes live. And if for some reason those 3 calibrations don't line up, it sends a message to our engineers, our technical team, and they address that issue. If it's an issue that needs to be dealt with, if somebody needs to go out there and it can't be communicated over the computer or anything like that, we'll have our technicians go out there and address that situation.
Okay, so the fee is $75 for speeding in the school zone.
That's correct.
And then there's an additional $25 that your company keeps.
Correct. And that $25 is also stated in the House bill that has been passed, and that is what covers all of our expenses. We make that the effort that we put in to do the training, put the systems up, the helping with the courts and all that stuff, that is getting received on the back side of it, and that helps provide, helps us recoup our money on that side as well.
Okay, does your company pay the court that handles this any fees for the work that they do in handling your cases?
What we have seen in the past is the money that gets issued back to the county that can potentially be used to cover that service and that time that's being invested.
Okay, but that's for the use of our streets, of putting your equipment on our streets. So that's the $75. But is there an additional fee that your company pays us for the personnel in our court that has to handle these? And also the person in the sheriff's department who has to determine whether a ticket is valid or not. So there are no additional.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. The $75 includes all that. That is our fee, and those are our expenses. As a matter of fact, I spoke with the sheriff about that. We want to encourage the sheriff to hire retired deputies that can come back, that we pay no benefits to, or health insurance.
Company pay those
No,
fees
that's
because that's their profit.
That comes out of our money. That's the $75 we're getting, because we're not, I won't say we're not doing anything for $75. That $75 will include the money we typically fund the budget for the municipal court, because they're going to be doing work anyway. They're already funded through this government. And also any of the fees that the sheriff has to incur for an officer looking at these, which we believe is going to be nominal. The amount of money that we have seen projections on, and I don't want to get the cart before the horse, is a pretty substantial amount of money with a small amount coming out for the sheriff and the courts. And we're also going to be, and it's for a conversation another day, lightening the load of our municipal court to just do these tickets and blight, and not have to deal with the other issues in that court. It would go to state court.
Okay, municipal court's just gonna be handling these
Citations and the blight court. It was initially set up, municipal court was initially set up to handle blight anyway, to be an environmental court. And I anticipate with the aggressive that this commission wants to be on tearing down houses and through code enforcement, that's going to be it's going to be enough to keep them busy without having to worry about cases from state patrol and other types of cases that have in the past gone through municipal court.
Okay, and I know I had a lot of questions. I was jotting down a lot of notes, and thank you for indulging me. One final thing. There's already tickets being issued for a school bus if you pass a school bus, and I know that's a separate.
That's no longer. I hate to say that publicly. It's still against the law to pass the school buses. They're no longer using the camera system.
Really?
That particular system did create some problems because we actually leased that equipment, and it had to be split 3 ways, and the bottom line is we weren't making any money. It was discontinued.
That was why I was asking, because I know a number of people who received those tickets for passing a school bus, and when they reviewed the film and the picture, they found that they had not passed the school bus. It was just one little area there where you got caught, right. There. So, and I know, the solicitor's office handled that, and I think there was some complaints about having to handle that with no compensation.
Right. I think
so. That was why I was asking about it, and I think y'all ought to pay some more of your fees to our court that's handling all of these cases, and because that's monies that y'all are getting, and we're providing the backup service for you. And then also in putting in the concrete poles, our personnel, our folks are going to have to oversee and make sure that you're putting it just right and not interfering with anything else. So that's just my opinion, that Macon-Bibb ought to get a little bit more of the fees. And then I did notice too that you were saying that nobody's driver's license is affected or anything, but I did notice that you were proposing collection activities on somebody who doesn't pay it, and then also their tags would be impacted. Can you just speak on that, and then I'm through?
Yeah, and so that can be addressed with the county, whether they want to pursue collections or whether they want to go through the Department of Revenue and place a registration hold on a tag. The only the only tags that you can put registration holds on is a Georgia tag. It's not out-of-state tags. But these are simply suggestions that help with getting payments on your side, on your behalf. It's not something that we just go and do on our own. It's going to be up to the county to whether they wanted to pursue that decision to do that or not. We're not going to go do it on our own on that side of it. We provide the service and
Okay, we're all about safety, and I think I would like to request if pedestrian safety can take a look at this and maybe endorse it. I know you don't need it, you may have the votes to pass it, but I would like to request maybe that pedestrian safety take a look. There's a meeting next Tuesday. Would you indulge us and allow pedestrian safety to take a look at it? And then, if the group says, well, we wholeheartedly endorse it, then we could maybe help later on in explaining it to the public. Would that be reasonable?
What I would do is we'll go ahead and handle business today and take a vote on that. And then, since your meeting is on the morning time before our meeting on the next Tuesday, if you determine that there's substantial cause of concern or issues, we'll remove that item for a separate discussion.
Okay, that's fair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioner Williams, you had a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I have a question?
First of all, thank you for your succinct and simple and detailed presentation. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Anybody that can follow it like me, it was simple. Okay. I have a few questions, just kind of basic questions. When you have someone that violates the speed limit, they get a first notice, it's just a warning notice, is that correct? What if they're violating it every day? And are they going to get several warning notices before? I don't understand how that works, but I'm glad you used Carter Elementary for an example of 17,000 vehicles, because probably 16,998 exceed the speed limit, except Commissioner Jones and I, who go through there a lot. But that's a good example, because that's a very heavily traveled and road with lots of people going over the speed limit, just the normal speed limit. But back to my question, on the initial notice of warning, they get that. Does it go out very quickly?
yes,
I mean,
we have a maximum of a 14-day turnaround.
Okay.
And in that process, and this is prior, leading up to this, we would also encourage public awareness statements to be released and possibly be put on the website as well, so people can be aware. And a list, of course, an article is already released with the specific schools that it's going in, and so that way everybody, it's fair. We want to present something to the community that comes across fair and sustainable is one of the biggest things. Is because ideally in the perfect world nobody would speed in the school zone, but all of us know that that's not necessarily the case. So we try to mitigate that by, on the front end, making sure everybody knows what's going on, which schools the systems are going to be in, and just give people notice on that side of it as well. And then you also have the 30-day warning period. One of the things from our experience, our extensive experience with programs like this, is the certain issue is the multiple citations being issued out in that 14-day period, because people travel that road. We recommend during that time limiting that to 2, because if say it's around Christmas time and they're trying to buy family presents for their little ones, and they got $800 worth of speeding tickets because they go through that school zone 3 or 4 times during the day. We want to mitigate that. This program is not primarily focused on generating revenue. Once a system goes up, we see a 80% reduction in speed, which is huge.
Yeah.
And you're talking about large numbers like this, and people are always going to speed, so the program's still going to be able to function. But it's that 80% reduction is what is helpful, because it works.
So if they get a citation, a warning citation, they won't get another one within the first 3 days, just think.
Commissioner Wynn, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but the warning is just that first 30-day moratorium when it starts to get installed.
And there's only one warning.
Yeah, it's warning for the 30 days. They may have 5 tickets because they may get 5 before they get that first notice in 2 weeks.
System recognizes the tag.
It does,
immediately,
and
right?
it keeps track. Like, so say if somebody goes through that, like we were talking earlier about 4 or 5 different times different in a day, and they're like, well, we're getting picked on. Well, really, you might have only gotten 2 citations, but you've done it 10 times. But we keep a record of that, and that is presented to the law enforcement personnel, so they can bring that up if they're having a hardship on that side of it. That can also be presented to them as well, because the biggest thing is to help change that behavior so they'll slow down and keep our children safe in those particular school zones.
Does the system capture the speeding as it's coming towards the, whatever it is, a warning sign?
Yeah, so we erect signs on either side of it as well, which is 500 feet prior to the reduction in speed.
Okay.
So they're well aware that going into the school zone, almost before a school zone sign, before a school sign pops up, it says, school photo enforced sign that comes up. They pass through that sign, they're being made aware of that. Then 500 feet down the road, the reduction in speed takes place. And so they have the flashing yellows to reduce their speed. And then once they go into that school zone, another X amount of feet, 300, 400, 500 feet, that is where the system takes place. And it is a over-the-road LiDAR system, which is 2 laser beams pretty much pointed down the road with a certain distance apart that's already been calculated. Breaks that first beam, breaks the second beam, the timer stops. And so it gets it as it's leaving. So it gets it right then and there, like going through the system, because it's over the road and it's pointing down, and then it captures that vehicle once it passes it.
Okay, and one more thing, I guess, to the mayor, is, the $75 charge for the first citation. Yes, I think that covers the cost that we may have associated with it in any way. Still, it's not a thing to make money. I realize that's a public safety thing, but we can generate money too to help to go towards additional public safety.
It costs less than $15 to do the whole process. So we will make money to help public safety.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Thank you again for your presentation.
And I think Commissioner Bronson, you had a question?
Yes, sir. So thank you for your presentation as well.
Thank you.
So just to make sure I'm covering you right? So driving down the road, pass through the lane, I see a flash, right? Flashlight. It takes 3 photos.
It takes 2 photos. What the officer is going to look at is they're going to have the initial photo, and then shortly after that, there's another photo to make sure that there's actual movement in that car.
Okay.
So there's point of references on the side of the road that we use to make sure that there's actually movement in that car, and that kind of tightens up that process a little bit. And that's one of the things that I train the deputies on, to make sure that in each picture that you see that the car has progressed forward.
Okay. I was under the impression that it would have been, and just kind of walking the scenario with saying is basically drive through an area, you see that flash of a light, it's taking 3 photos, your tag, the car, then the mile marker that it's passing. And then from there, basically 14 days, I get a ticket in the mail. Correct. And then I have the opportunity to either A, pay the ticket, or argue it in court, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You stated that it's going Monday through Friday during the school hours. What about during evening times for games? So I know Northeast High School is shared between me and Commissioner Lucas. Mm-hmm. So we have vehicles that are on the side of the road and they still fly through there. So in the evening of a game, does the camera trigger back on?
We can do that. In the law, it states that any school-related activity that is taking place in that particular school zone the system can run during that time. And if you have specific school zones where there are football games or baseball games or whatever that are taking place on a consistent basis during that particular school day, we can make sure that system is turned on during that time.
Okay. And then you said signage. Signage is 500 feet or?
Yes, so the warning sign is put up 500 feet prior to that all. We take and we're able to make that happen on our side of it.
Last two questions and I'll leave you alone. In regards to shipping schools, say for instance, we have another school closure, hopefully it doesn't happen at all. But we already seen that, you know, we had a school listed that is already being moved. In that event, who covers the cost to get the cameras shifted?
We do that.
Okay. Cool.
Yes, anything that is related to the program, moving either a trailer to a different school zone or a system to a different school zone, any of that infrastructure stuff, or some of the software things and training new employees on that software, we take that and we cover that for the county.
And then hacking wise, have your program ever been hacked at all?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bronson. Commissioner Jones, you have a question?
Yes, sir, thank you. Sir, you said, I heard you say there's no cost to Macon-Bibb County at all, set up, anything at all involved with it. You cover all the costs for us.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And then, so the only other question was the 30-day warning period for each school zone. So when a person gets that 30-day warning, do they get the warning? Does it tell them which school zone, the street address, etc.?
Yes, it has all that information.
That's all that detail.
Yes, and the timestamp, speed, all of that, and the amount of speed they were actually going over as well. So they're made aware of that.
Okay. I think it's a good thing for us to take on, and I've got to leave in a minute, but I'll vote for it.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Pro Tem Carr.
Yeah, I'll be brief. You mentioned that initially there's an 80% drop in the behavior of speeding. After that drops and the collections, for lack of a better word, to y'all and us plateau, what percentage of that initial collection, where does that plateau off, and when you see that drop, what does that look like?
It's with if I'm understanding your question correctly, it does plateau. Like I said earlier, there's always somebody that is speeding in that zone, and it usually just sticks at that 80% reduction. That's from the hundreds of systems that we have deployed in school zones. That's what our experience has been. Is that 80% drops? And it just kind of stays level at that.
Yeah, I know we looked at one particular, and I have you, Mr. Howell, just a second. One system, and I don't want to say where it's at, but there was 1,200 in one day citations. So if it dropped by 80%, that would be a lot safer, but you can imagine still that 20% represents a large number. So Commissioner Howell, we'll close it out with you.
Yeah, like some of the other commissioners, I've looked at this, and I'm not a huge fan of camera systems being used in traffic lights and other things, but I think in the school system, in this particular zone, this is a great solution for Macon-Bibb. As you were saying, the presentation answered a lot of questions, but I see that if we have an 80% reduction, that's great. Meanwhile, I too have concerns about what it costs the county to do this. However, if we're doing this on our own, number one, we have to have police officers at every location doing it that we're paying a salary. Then we have to have, the courts we have to figure out how to handle every single ticket, whether they're paying at the clerk's office or whether they're going to court or whatever. We have to handle that. It sounds like with this, there's only going to be like 1%, or even if it was 5%, I see it's cheaper on us to do it this way than the other way, and it frees up our limited supply of police officers and handles it. So I see this particular system working for us well in the school system. It's just my concern that we use it in the right places, especially at these high volume. It looks like y'all have already got that under control. So with that, I'm certainly in favor of this.
Thank you, Commissioner Howell. I know we're ready to take a vote. Commissioner Lucas, do you have another question?
Yeah, several of the questions that I had have already been answered. I'm still concerned that with these kinds of things, you end up with your local municipality incurring expenses, and they are really large expenses. There's a reason why we didn't put in red light cameras, and we've discussed this 3 or 4 different times over the years, and the information was just overwhelming that it cost us a whole lot more than it was worth. I do hope this works because we do want greater safety, especially in our school zones. But there was a reason that the bus camera system was gotten rid of. And I would just like for us to be aware of the rights that we're giving away to other companies to ticket our citizens. Our citizens can be mailed a citation by a separate company for insurance coverages. If they run into something that belongs to the city, we have a contract with a company where they can bill our citizens, and we have to handle the paperwork. And I'm not sure we're recouping the value that we thought we would. So I would just like for us to watch this very closely, because it does bother me that we're turning over to a separate company the right to ticket our citizens one more time. And then we turned over to the Water Authority the right to add a fee onto the water bill for some other things, legitimate fees. However, citizens are still the ones who are having to pay. So I just want us to be real careful with the kind of things powers that we turn over to other companies to deal with our citizens, and then we end up having to spend additional money in courts and through our sheriff's department to make sure that you get your $75 per your $25. But thank you though for allowing pedestrian safety to review it, and I'll support it reluctantly.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioner Watkins?
Clear. We're still on item 6A, or we're going?
We're on 6A, yes, sir.
Okay.
6B is the contract.
I yield to 6B.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Wynn, I'll get you on the next part. It's still the same company, okay? Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Just how long are we going to monitor this to see when we start adding other school zones in there, like Sunny Carter on?
We anticipate all schools will be added pursuant to Dr. Jones's request, but we're going to start out with S9 since it represented the 2 schools basically on the same campus.
Okay.
So we'll phase those in appropriately once we get our feet wet on this. We're going to move on to item 6B, which is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement with Opto Traffic LLC, the provision of automated school zone speed cameras. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Bronson. Questions, Commissioner Watkins?
I was just curious, what was the selection process? Is it sole source or?
This is professional services that require that I'll let Attorney Gruber handle that.
Right, and that's exactly right. It's a consultant professional services, doesn't require a bid process. There are not that many of these organizations that do this, and I think we had a number of interviews and discussions with them. There were several other companies that were above the cost of this company and did not own the equipment that they did.
So y'all did solicit bids, or I missed that, just slightly confusing.
No, there's not that. I mean, we did solicit bids. There's only a couple of companies that do this, so we knew who they were.
Did I answer your question?
So, just, we called those companies and they all submitted information to us, so we,
That's correct.
all right, just remind me again, how does professional services?
Professional, sure. Under the procurement code, professional services, unlike other services, are not required to be put out to bid or an RFP or anything like
I
that.
think professional services, I think of lawyers, architects, engineers.
I use it,
provide
yeah,
like
it's also
consultation type work.
Sure, and it's also consultants who have special knowledge in a particular area, and use a lot of discretion. So for example, any organization doing this for us, because we don't have the equipment and we talk about cost, would help us go through the process. For example, they have to do traffic studies to implement these things.
It strikes me more as a good or a service than a consultation, but I yield.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Howell?
Yes, I know for a fact that we have a booklet available for us to look at, from the clerk's office yesterday. And I just want to point out that I went through that presentation too, and it was a 65-35 split, so it was a lot different this is a lot better deal as far as we're concerned, as far as, I know that was one presentation offered to us.
And all of the two other companies had the same split. We got more out of this relationship.
Okay, we see no other lights on. We had a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. We'll be sent to consent agenda. We have a contract for renewal. That is going to be 7A, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with WMA Planning, the designers, architects, in the amount of $25,000, completion design services for the judicial parking lot project to be paid from 2018 SPOS funds, judicial parking deck property line item. That's my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Howell. Any discussion in this regard? Seeing no light, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. We'll move on to some informational items. First item on the agenda is an item sponsored by Commissioner Tillman. Commissioner Tillman, happy birthday. He is not here today. That's an informational item on there, so we'll be voting on it for today anyway, so it'll be back on the calendar in 2 weeks. We'll move on to item B. Item B, I think we added this to the agenda fairly late, but it's an information item only. We will not be asking for a vote on that, so I don't think there's a motion needed to add it to the agenda. But I'll tell you what it is because you'll receive some information. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 22, Article and 5 of the Code for purposes of establishing Macon-Bibb County as its exclusive collector of commercial solid waste and approving for franchise fees for such collection activities. This is a franchise fees. We're going to send you all that information today that you'll have 2 weeks to review that, ask any questions that you have, and we'll come back in 2 weeks and discuss that. I wanted to go ahead and put that on your radar so you can go ahead and research that and have your questions hopefully ahead of time that we can ask and do a presentation on that in 2 weeks. The last item is executive session. There is no need to go into executive session today, so we will not be going into executive session. And any other business that any of the commissioners have at this time? We will be taking a recess now. This time we're going to recess this committee meeting. We will adjourn at the completion of the site visit to Bibb and Housing County Fire Training Centers.